Good morning. This is the Saturday Morning Mastermind, and I'm Catherine Clement out of Boulder, Colorado. And I'm here with my friends Dan and Bill, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute. Bill stepped away, so I'm not sure if he'll be able to introduce himself or not. But we gather here every Saturday morning, or almost every Saturday morning. And sometimes there's more of us, sometimes there's less of us. But we do different book studies, and right now we're studying the book The Five Love Languages, the singles edition. And these books that we study are primarily self-help books. This one is very informative and helps you to figure out what makes you tick, basically, and what makes other people tick. And so therefore improving communication and improving relationships between people. So we're studying chapter 11 this week, and we'll discuss that here after I let introductions go on.
Hi, I'm Dan Sissick. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, and love the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Been a part of it for quite a few years now, and just really enjoying this book as it's helping me to understand and open my eyes of what I see as my primary love language and how I, give it out to other people, and what I learn how I want to receive it back. And what I'm learning from this book is everybody has their own love language, and that's part of learning how to understand what it is, so that way, as Catherine said, we can better communicate and show that love and get that love that we need to receive back to others and from others. So with that, looking forward to what chapter 11 has to say for us.
Okay, and I'm Bill Maybauer, and I've been on and off this group, and I read the book a couple of years ago, and it's a great one to get to understand and know people, and it comes up in conversations all the time, or at least you're thinking about it. What is their love language? And you got to address that to have a happy life. So I'll be looking forward to it.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Bill. And yeah, it's interesting how when I'm talking to people, I'm kind of looking for the clues. What's their love language? Basically, the premise of the book is that, as humans, we have the need to feel loved, but contrary to what we've all been taught, like men have been taught that, buy your lady a gift and she'll be happy, and women have been taught, cook your husband a good supper and he'll be happy. Those things help, but it doesn't always make someone feel loved. And there's 5 primary love languages that this gentleman has established, the author of this book. And there are others, but this is a great beginning study. And basically it breaks it down into 5, and I don't have them listed right in front of me, but they're, different people. Like for me, mine's acts of service. So I've always, I was a nurse for 20 years, and that just tends to be how I show people love, is by doing things for them and taking care of them and things. And sometimes the way that we receive love and the way that we show love are different, but oftentimes it's the same. And a lot of times what we don't realize, and this is where the rub comes in, what we don't realize is that just because I could be showing you love every day, but through acts of service, but if your primary love language is different, you might not be feeling that love. And this chapter specifically speaks to, should you get married? And it talks about some of the things that you should discuss before you get married, and some of the things you should identify about each other to find out if you're really compatible or not. Because as we all know, the divorce rate is, I think, well over 50%. And if you've been married more than once, like each marriage, it gets less and less and less chance that it's going to make it. So I think a lot of the reason for that is because, there is this, what they call the honeymoon period in the beginning, where basically your hormones are in charge. You got all these fancy chemicals floating around in your blood, and they call it rose-colored glasses. You don't see the faults of the other person or anything, for about 2 years. I think it's the time period that they've designated that you stay in that in love period where nothing matters, and you're just head over heels and you're flooded with emotion, and then after 2 years that kind of wears off, and you take the rose-colored glasses off, and all of a sudden you see all the person's faults, and ironically enough, many times the things that you were most attracted to in a person in the beginning are the things that annoy you the most about them after a while. So it's really interesting, love and relationships, and any kind of book that can help us figure that out is a good one, I think. And this one has certainly taught me a lot about myself, and not just love relationships, but these love languages help you communicate with anybody, any kind of relationship, even the cashier at the store, Um, so it's not, if you're not in a romantic relationship, don't feel like this book isn't for you, because it might give you enough understanding to get you into one if you're interested in one.
Well, I think it's interesting that you bring up that point about how it can be broadly used just in everyday life, in your everyday relationships, or in everyday interactions, because the more we understand how, by learning and understanding clues, that's where I'm still having troubles with. I'm not fully picking up on those clues with other people yet. Um, and like where you are right now, Catherine, I wish I was there because it might help me a little bit more. But I'm understanding myself more and better. But I can see how you can say, like, being at the cashier or somewhere, and by the way they respond, or certain words they say, or certain actions they do, you can pick up on that and say, oh well, let me change how I respond with them, and maybe you could, one, make their day better or more pleasant because you just responded in their love language, and it kind of builds them up for that moment or for that little time being, and helps them change their mindset for a little while until the next person that comes on and just rubs them the next way or something like that. But I can see how it can help in everyday life, how, just interacting and being more cognizant of how we, deal with other people, and taking that extra time and that extra moment to understand where they're coming from, because we all say that sometimes. Well, do you understand what I'm saying, or do you understand where I'm coming from? And a lot of times we just play it off and we say, yeah, yeah, whatever, when we really don't, you know. But if we learn to interpret how they would even respond, well, then we can respond back appropriately and maybe change our direction and pull that out of them in a sense, and get, um, give them what they need, just in everyday life. And then that's something, I love the fact that you just brought up, because I started reading this chapter last night, and I didn't even get that much out of that. I got a lot of out, like you said, that honeymoon phase, and how in the one example you gave, you know, in that honeymoon phase, yeah, they were very focused on each other, and they put that focus intentionally. That's the part that I think people need to understand, is when you're in that first initial stage of dating and stuff and going together, and it does, like I said, it usually lasts up to 2 years, give or take. Everybody's a little different, but you're just focused, and you've got that laser focus in, and you're like this, you got the blinders on, and so when you're with them, you're just that 100%. But then once you get married or you get past that initial phase, then it becomes a mundane and everyday thing. And like you said, Catherine, that's when the things that so attracted you to them now are the things that so like, oh, it's like, get away, you're holding up your fingers with like the sign of the cross, get away, you demon, because, who are you? You totally flipped on me, and this is not the person I fell in love with. And I think, being able to understand those things and actively talk about it and help each other understand that, okay, when we get past this is going to change somehow. How are we going to deal with it? And not enough couples, I think, understand that or even aware of that. That's something they need to do.
Yeah, they give a really great example in the book. They're talking about this married couple, and I guess they dated 2 or 3 years. So essentially, they passed through the honeymoon phase before they ever got married, is what happened. But both of them were older. Both of them had successful marriages before, and they were both widows. So they they both understood the honeymoon phase, and so that didn't bother them that wasn't there anymore. But then what happened was they got married, and suddenly they found out that they were at odds with each other about a lot of different things. And part of the problem was, and in this case it was a very easy fix because they were personal friends with the author of the book, and basically the guy said, um, here's the book, read the book, and then let's have a session. And so they read the book, and of course he had wanted them to read it before they got married, and they didn't feel like they needed it. But then they said they wish they had read it. For them, it was an easy fix because they did love each other. And once they read the book and they figured out each other's love languages, they saw what happened. And I think I'm bringing this out because I think this is a really, really common scenario. What happened was, like in the beginning when they were dating, the guy would come over and, he would paint her room or he would fix something that was broken. And she just thought that he was the bomb for doing that. She just loved him and that was amazing. And she praised him and everything. Well, then once they got married and he was working on the house and working on this and working on that, she quit the praising. In fact, she was harassing him. She was like bitching and moaning because he was always busy. And what they found out is that her love language was quality time, and his love language were words of affirmation. So what happened, with her bitching at him, that was really messing with him, because if your love language is words of affirmation and somebody's bitching at you, you take it really hard. Like if they're complaining, it's really, really hard on you. And for her, he was always busy and she just wanted that quality time. And so once they realized that, he was able to, they set up like a date night a week and, a couple nights a week where they would go for a walk after dinner or whatever, and she realized that how much she was hurting him with the things that she was saying. But it goes back to exactly what you said, Dan. It's intention. Once they understood, because they did love each other and they did care enough to want to fix this relationship and make it work, they took the time to read the book and then change their actions. They cared enough about the other person to look at what they were doing, to recognize it was hurting the other person, and then to change those actions and to really pull off of these love languages and then make them feel loved. Each one of them was feeling loved again. In the beginning, when they were dating, they were both feeling loved from each other. But then later on, both of them, when the guy asked them, where's your love tank at, 0 to 10 or whatever, they were both like 0. I don't feel any love from this person. Well, it wasn't because the other person didn't love them. It was just because they weren't speaking their love language. So I think that's a great example. I think it's so common for that I mean, that's why we have the more than 50% divorce rate right there. And I mean, that's just it right there. In the beginning, they're focused on each other. Um, I think the other thing is, and this chapter brings up a lot of good like areas. I think there was about 5 areas or so that it brings up that married couples should things that they should discuss. And I have to say, I've been married multiple times, and some of these things my former spouses and I never ever discussed. Like we just were in that honeymoon phase and we just felt like everything would work itself out. And had we discussed some of these things ahead of time, we could have seen how incompatible we were and maybe saved ourselves a lot of time and heartbreak. Um, Now, sometimes people aren't truthful, or and maybe they're not intentionally being untruthful, but maybe they're just trying to put their best foot forward, because I think most of us on some level feel like, we're not enough, or we're not, like we need to be put our best foot forward, and then after a while, you can only put it forward so long, and after the while, the other part of you kind of catches up. Your other foot catches up. And so sometimes you might think that somebody's love language is one thing, and it turns out to be something else, and I think that could happen really easily. That's happened to me with my current relationship. And it wasn't a matter of dishonesty by anyone or anything. It's just a matter of doing what society has taught you is the appropriate thing to do versus being yourself. And I think being yourself is the key here. We have to discover enough about ourselves and be in integrity and honest with ourselves about how we feel about things, what we think about things, um, what our needs are. So many of us don't do that. So many of us just go by whatever mom and dad taught us was what we're supposed to do or how we're supposed to think. And we don't take the time to discover what we think and how we feel. And so then you partner up with somebody else and you're in that honeymoon phase. And so you're tending to go along with what they like, right? Because you want to be nice. And, if they want to watch such and such, I don't have anything against sports, but I think it's a common thing. They mention Golf Widow in the book. Sometimes guys are real focused on sports, and when in the dating period, the girl may have no interest in sports, but because she wants him to like her, she sits with him with the games, or she says, "Oh yeah, go do that with your buddies or whatever. This is awesome." But then later on, especially if she's a quality time person, she's going to resent that if she doesn't really like sports. Like she's going to start resenting that he's spending so much time doing that. I think that's another really common thing. And same thing, swap that, reverse that. And this is so stereotypical, but I'm just going to bring it up as an example. Let's say she's, a shopper, and he goes along with her to the stores, and, he's just kind of trying to be nice. And Dan, you're laughing. So I know this is triggering something in you. But, he's just kind of like, "Oh, yeah," and maybe he gives her some money for shopping or whatever. I don't know, because I'm not a shopper. But then later on, he's complaining because she's shopping all the time, and she's complaining because he's sporting all the time. And so I think, knowing and owning up to what you really like and what you don't like and what you find acceptable and what you don't find acceptable could really save a lot of people a lot of angst down the road. But we try to be, quote, compatible, and then later on resent it, and that causes a lot of issues, I think.
Well, I was going to jump out and say I think one of our key areas that aid to this in a not a good way, to how we perceive, um, one, like you said, partly our parents, but I believe from our parents, they're trying to give us the best intentions and to what they've learned and what they know. And so I don't fault parents per se, but I think out there in the world, what society and what we have come to, for lack of a better word, use as objectification to, um, as to how we think the world tells us how we're supposed to be, like you were saying a little bit, and we put way too much emphasis on all that out there rather than having, things included. And I'm going to say, I think, like in school, books like this, maybe even in school, to help, of course, with parents know, and and saying, look, we understand their bedrock of where they get, but help them understand maybe some of what you're trying to teach them to better put it in better understanding, so that way they can go out in the world and be themselves, but yet know how to navigate the waters of life and how to treat people and interact with people better, so that way we don't have all the stuff we have going on, like even now, you know because um I think inherently people don't want to be the way they're responding in a lot of situations, but that's the way they know how to respond, because they're not getting what they need to feel loved in a sense, but understood, and that their feelings matter just as much as the other person's feelings matter. If I'm saying this right. um, and then I noticed something about me that, and partly because of this book, and now something that you were saying, Catherine, a lot of times people will say, "Oh," to me, they'll say, "Oh, you're so this, or you're so nice." And I've said this over and over the years, and I'm never understood why I said it, but I would always say, "Oh, I'm just being me. That's just me. That's how I am." And it's true. When they would say those things, I'm like, "What's the big deal? I'm just me. I'm nothing special. That's all. I'm just being who I am." And I never really understood that till now, because this is how I was responding, or how I was giving out the love, but yet, in some ways it wasn't always. I think they received it in a good way, but it was never not always in the way they needed it. But they were still somehow giving me words of affirmation, but I just kind of said, well, it's just me being me, and I never realized you know, how much I do that, because of my nature. And it was just interesting now, just to kind of get a clearer understanding of that about myself, even. So even now, right now, we're talking about it, and I'm learning more about myself.
Yeah, I hear that from other people too. Um, it's interesting because, like you, I just kind of brush it off and I think, well, because I'm acts of service, so people say, "Wow, I can't believe you did that for that person," and I'll be thinking, "Well, what do you mean? Like, why wouldn't anybody do that for that? I can't understand why everybody wouldn't do that for that person." And but there are people that won't do anything for anybody. Like that's just that's not their love language. And but I see, yeah, I totally get what you're saying. You think like, well, what's the big deal? That anybody would do that, or anybody would say that, or whatever. I wanted to read this. There's a paragraph in this chapter that I don't know. It should be in everybody's vows, marriage vows, or friend vows, or whatever kind of vows. He says, respect begins with this attitude. This is the quote. I acknowledge that you are a creature of extreme worth. God has endowed you with certain abilities and emotions. Therefore, I respect you as a person. I will not desecrate your worth by making critical remarks about your intellect, your judgment, or your logic. I will seek to understand you and grant you the freedom to think differently from the way I think and to experience emotions that I may not experience. Now, that's a powerful paragraph right there, because I think in a lot of relationships, you are expected to think the way that person thinks and have the same emotions. Like, people just expect you to be whatever they expect you to be. And just, I know it sounds so simplistic, but really think about your expectations of other people. Are you allowing them to be them, to actually be them? And I know for me, I'm a pretty tough old cookie. And so I'll find myself, I don't like consciously set out to judge people, but I catch myself judging. Um, like recently, my son, poor thing, I feel so bad for him being my son. But, he got hurt and he was at work and he wanted to go to the hospital. And I'm like, no, you just stick it out. Yes. You can just deal with it. Like, he has a hard time keeping jobs, and he just got this new one. It was his first day. Leaving on your first day is not the best way to keep a job. And he was in pain, but I've been in pain for years, 24/7, and pain doesn't kill you. Like, you just push through it, you get through the shift, and then you can go to the doctor. And the poor thing, he did, and it all worked out, and he lived through it. But, I have to admit, I had judged him, and I was just like, no, you're not, you just have to man up, basically. And so sometimes I'll catch myself, I'll look at a situation and I'll think, well, why are they so emotional over that? Or, I look at them through my lens instead of through their lens. And we need to look at people through their lens, not what we would do in a situation, but what would, we really shouldn't even have any expectations about anybody for any situation, to be quite honest, because we're not there in the moment in their shoes. We don't have their history. We don't know what has come before and what is causing them to act in the way they're acting, so the words "thou shalt not judge" is, pretty good words there. We need to just let people be whatever they are and not try to throw our own set of how we would respond in a certain situation onto them.
Yeah, I agree, because I was just thinking how often, and I think he even talks about this book, how often has he heard, well, um, they're not doing such and such, or they don't do this, or they don't do that, when that's your thing, and you're trying to make them into you, in essence, rather than letting them be them and you giving them what they need, so then they in turn want to give that back to you. And I think that's one of the things that we have out in our problem in our world today, is we want everybody to see and feel and think things exactly from where we're at and where we're coming from, and you know what, that would be a pretty mundane world for everybody to all act, feel, and think and see things exactly the same way. And um, how would things get done in that sense? To me, I think, like you said, if we learn to take it off of ourselves and let the other, take it off of ourselves of expecting them to be exactly like us, and turn around and let people be themselves and accept them for who they are, because that's what everybody says. Oh, I just want to be accepted for who I am. Or I just want to be loved for who I am. But then do we ever do that? Most of the time, no. And that's what I think this book helps to open our eyes to seeing is, you know, like the old saying, you get more, uh, flies, what is it, flies with honey or bees with honey or something to that, than you do with vinegar, that type of thing. You know, if you give out what other people are needing, you get that back, you get out of them what you're needing. And I think, it's just something, the world needs to learn better. And I really like how this book does it. And I like what I'm learning from it.
Yeah, you're right. We do. We just expect people to be like us, you know, and that's not how it is. That is not how it is. I wanted to touch a little bit on these areas because I think whether you're in a relationship or not, a love relationship, I mean, I think that these are, if you ever think that you may be in one, these are things that you might want to start thinking about just so that you um, have a foundation for yourself and you understand yourself a little more. And the first thing that it talks about is intellectually. Where are you guys a match intellectually, or if you're not in a relationship, where are you intellectually? Like, do you read the newspaper? Do you watch the news? What are your opinions about that? It's interesting in we study books here, but back in school we would have to do book reports, and then you'd read a book and you'd give your thoughts about that. So one of the things that it suggests is maybe you could each you could read a book, you could both read the same book, and then have discussions about it with each other, and what your opinions and how it made you feel or whatever. So when you're considering, I mean, this chapter talks about going into marriage. When you're considering marriage or any kind of relationship with anybody, are you on the same page intellectually? Now, you don't have to be like a perfect match for each other for it to work, but you have to have enough respect for each other to not judge the other one if it's not an exact match. So but knowing where you're at is important, because if one person is highly analytical, let's say, and the other person is not, that's one of those things that unless you can offer that respect to let them be who they are, that's one of those things that's going to come back and annoy you after a while. Like the person that wants to have the highly intellectual conversation is not going to be satisfied with the person that doesn't want to have that, and vice versa. The one's going to be annoyed by the one that always wants to have the intellectual conversation. So, there's got to be a happy medium somewhere. And then the second one it talks about is, social unity. Because marriage, it talks about marriage being unity, or, now I'm going to take marriage out of it because there's a lot of people that aren't even marrying anymore. They're just living together or whatever, or, perpetual dating. But for it to be a good match, there has to be unity there. So it talks about intellectual unity. Now it talks about social unity. What are you into? Sports, music, dance, parties? Just because if one person really enjoys going to galas and, fancy parties and being the toast of the town or whatever, and the other person is a homebody, then obviously, there's going to be a rub there. So to know that about yourself, do you really, and this is where integrity with self comes in, don't, don't, don't lie to yourself about what you like or don't like. Really ask yourself, do I want to go out more? Do I want to go out less? Do I enjoy being in the spotlight, not the spotlight? Can I support someone else in the spotlight? And if you don't like going to parties and your lover does, or your friend or whoever this relationship is that something that, do you love them enough to go with them and do that without being in a piss poor mood? Because if you're just going to go and you're going to ruin the whole experience for them, that's no good, right? So these are things that I don't think people talk about necessarily. The third one is, do you have a clear understanding of the other person's personality, their strengths, their weaknesses? There's a lot of personality profiles out there that you can take online, or you could go to a counselor and they'll give you a personality profile. We had to take one back in college, and I don't know, it was like 4 letters or something that everybody was designated with. I mean, there are, just like there's like primary love languages, there's certain personality types. To break it down really simply, probably everybody's heard about, what is it, A-type personality and B-type personality or something, where one is very high strung basically, and the other was very laid back basically. And so how much do you know about that other person? Because when you're in this honeymoon phase, all of those are skewed. Like, you don't really get a clear, honest picture during that honeymoon phase unless you are specifically having some discussions around these things and really pulling that out of the other one. And then the fourth one is spiritual unity. And that's not just, are you both open to going to church or whatever, but really because a lot of people go to church and some of them don't believe in God. Like, they just go to church because they were told that's what they're supposed to do. And that's what a quote good person does or whatever. But as far as their own personal relationship with God, they don't have one. And so where are you guys at spiritually? Because that can be a big rub for people. If one person is wants to be at church 4 times a week and the other person is an atheist or something, that can be a huge rub. So some of these things, while they're not necessarily comfortable to talk about, they're certainly necessary to talk about, to prevent friction later on down the road. And then the fifth one he talks about is, to talk about your sexual histories with each other. He says that marriages don't have a skeleton closet, or shouldn't have a skeleton closet, that you should be completely forthright with your partner about your history. And of course, being a nurse, I have to agree with this one because, there's so many diseases and things that some of them aren't curable. So if your partner's not being truthful with you about their history, you don't know, it's not an informed decision that you're making. You don't know what you're agreeing to, because you could be agreeing to contracting a disease that is incurable. So truthfulness is so important. And I want to add here that it's not enough to talk about sexual histories, but to talk about sexual preferences. And, do you even like sex? Do you want to have sex? Are you capable of having sex? What kind of sex? Because people are turned on and turned off by many different things. Everybody's different, and if you are, I'm not saying that sex is the end all to a marriage, but if you're completely incompatible sexually, it could be the end of the marriage. So in the beginning, in the honeymoon phase, where the hormones are high and everything, those incompatibilities don't always show up because you're so in love that, even if you're a person that doesn't necessarily, uh, want sex 5 times a week or something, in the honeymoon phase, maybe you want it 5 times a day, But then later on down the road, suddenly your that honeymoon phase is worn off, and maybe you only want to have sex once a week, and your spouse still wants it 5 times a day and thinks that you want it 5 times a day because that's what you were doing during the honeymoon phase. And so that's a rude awakening to then suddenly find out, oh no, we're going from 5 times a day to 5 times a month or something, and that can really put a hurting on a relationship. And then, of course, 6 is, have you discussed love languages? Have you figured out what your love languages are, and are you willing to take the time to express love, not in a way that is necessarily the most comfortable for you, but in the way that your partner receives it?
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah, I was gonna say. It's funny how in our relationships, and maybe not to the depth and degree of like some of the things you pointed out, but uh, you know, um, certain aspects of it, depending on what type of relationships you're in, you need to cover some of these grounds. And I truly believe, like you said, especially if you're really seriously contemplating having a life together with one person, um, however be it, it works out and whoever it's with, just learning to be that open and honest. That's one thing we've not even really been taught, you know, and I'm going to say it, even in most marriages, even with our parents, you find out years later that there were secrets of like, at one point, your dad, you know, had an affair with some woman, and while you were growing up, and it was never, you never knew about it, you never understood it, and things like that and stuff. you know w- we're so conditioned to be, how do I say it, I guess, to put that mask on, or the facade on, or whatever, however you want to put it, you know because, and we also do it ourselves, just naturally, I think, because we're so afraid of what people think or how they might respond to us. But I think if we could get back to being a little more honest and open and understanding, and trying to give out love and what people need, it would drop a lot of the barriers that people have and open up lines of communications like people have never seen before. And but once again, humanity and people, get in their own way, and it's the continued repeat, because these are issues that we deal with now, but since history beginning, we've been dealing with these things, you know, all along. So it's just interesting, that the more we can understand ourselves, the better we can then relate to other people and hopefully be like, go back to, like you said, being our more authentic self.
Come on, Bill. Spread your wisdom on us. You're the longest lasting married person in this household right here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, come on, Bill, we need to hear from you now.
Well, some of that stuff you were talking about, and I get a lot of Patty talks. Patty's my wife, and a lot of it is she's trying to help me. And I've been talking with Bob, and Patty is another couple that I know, and he says, yeah, he gets a lot of those also. And it's, okay, when we first started dating, I was getting out of a divorce at that time. So Patty helped me and let me talk and do all of this stuff. And how it changed through time is now she's, asking or saying, you need to be doing this and you need to be doing that, and you shouldn't have said this, and so on and so forth. And okay, I just, it's changed through time, and it will. And so, it's just, and you're talking about your intimate relationship does change through time also, from when you were first married to we're getting up in our age, and so it's different now than what it used to be. I'll just say that and leave it there. But and we don't talk a whole lot about it, but we're also not complaining about it, and more cuddle time, and just all of that other stuff. And what you're saying, I've got to be thinking about this, with how I'm interacting with her, and coming back and talking about the various personality types too. As you were discussing, there's the red, green, blue, and yellow. Green meaning I'm a green. I'm an engineer. I like to analyze things. And my problem is I can't make a decision because I need some more information. Whereas others can make a decision very quickly. And Dan, I think you're probably more on the blue side.
I'm blue, but I'm an accountant, so I'm analytical on that sense. I go over and over and over and over, especially with friendships and relationships and people in my life. I will do that till I just overdo it. So yeah, but yeah. I think I'm a blue too.
And I can sit here and listen to you guys all day because I'm a green. I just like to listen, and so getting and talking is sometimes difficult for me to do that. But I enjoy hearing what you guys have to say. And where am I going with this? I'm not sure, but I know Patty and I keep working on it. And when Patty's giving me my helping talks, I'll call it that, I wonder, is this really worth it? But then she's down in Portland this weekend, and I'm driving down tomorrow. It's only a couple of hour drive. But our exchanges on text and her excitement about seeing me on Sunday there is something there. It's kind of nice and so I think she's doing it in all honesty to help where I'm coming from and doing better. So, it's a win-lose. It's a, work on it. And so how are we're progressing through this, and she keeps saying, well, you got to live to 90 or 100 because she's 10 years younger than me. So, I got to stay alive as long as she does. So, there's that. Oh, well, she wants me around for a while. So, is there love there? Yeah. Do we have to work on it? Yes. Are we always going to work on it? Yes. And so hearing some of this stuff and bringing it back to focusing, oh yeah, I got to think about that again. Because it's just, we read it a couple of years ago, and I'm reanalyzing and where I got to go with her, and you've got to talk about it and discuss it and bring it back to the forefront and say, oh yeah, this is what I got to do. So that's my 2 shakes, or whatever you want to call it. So I'll let somebody else talk again.
Yay, it was so good to hear from you. And yes, I'm very familiar with the personality colors, and it is difficult. Like a green likes to sit back and listen and just, take it all in. And I'm definitely a blue. Like a blue with yellow secondary, I guess. But it's work. Relationships are work. And like you said, things change and we have to be okay with the change. We can't just expect things to stay the same. Nothing stays the same. Nobody stays the same. Everybody changes, situations change, things change as we age. Other things will become more important and other things will become less important. And as long as we can, not get in this fixed, rigid position where everything has to stay exactly the same, we just have to go with the flow and understand that, yeah, things are going to change and people are going to change. And I know I changed a lot with my son's father, with that marriage, because when we got married, I was just a young, very naive. I mean, I was only 17 or 18 years old, I think, something like that. And then I wound up going to college and I became a nurse, which put me in a whole different headspace, and that brought a lot of changes to our marriage that he wasn't expecting. I fully take responsibility for that. I went from a very subservient young wife to someone who actually had her own opinions about things. And that was a mind flip for him. He kind of wanted that subservient wife, and I didn't turn out to be that. So we have to understand that nothing is stays the same. I mean, look at the leaves on the trees. This is a perfect time of year to realize that, things, they change their colors, then they drop off completely, and sometimes people do that too. And as much as we would like for certain relationships to last forever, some are not meant to last forever. But they can last a lot longer if we take the time to study books like this and respect the other person, and want to do things for their happiness and not just me all the time.
Yeah. And when you were just talking, I happen to think, and we get Minute with Maxwell, Maxwell, he sends out a 1 to 2 to 3 minute little short clip and talks about various words in growth and how he's always talking about you got to keep growing. If you're not growing, you're dying. And so it's kind of interesting. We sit here in the morning first thing and listen to 1 or 2 of those. And yeah, you're growing. You've got to keep growing. You got to keep changing. Otherwise, it's nothing. You've got to keep moving on. And I think I'm in a transition stage. I retired, but they brought me back to work. And yeah, I don't know what I would do if some days, once in a while, I'll be home and don't go into work, and I can get lost and the day can go away and not get anything done. So one of the good things about going back to work, I have a focus and a time frame and stuff going on. So yeah, you got to keep growing and going. Otherwise, it'll go away. I think that's why a lot of people don't make it many years past a retirement. I've got to watch that. So, because I'm one that could just sit here and relax in front of the boob tube, and that's not good either. So you got to grow, got to keep going in your life. So that's about it for me, Catherine. And yes, Catherine, you're a blue, so you can talk the whole show.
Yeah. Yeah, this is true.
You've got a lot of words to put out every day.
Well, we're at the top of the hour. Any closing thoughts?
I've given all the thoughts I can come up with. So grow and keep growing and keep going.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bill. How about you, Dan? Any closing thoughts? Looks like he might have had to step away for a minute.
Yeah, it looks like he had to go. I thought I heard a dog, or was that your dog?
No, it wasn't my dog. It must have been his.
Okay. Anyhow, oh, there he's coming back. Hey, Dan.
Sorry, I hate to admit it, but nature was calling. I'm like, oh, we only have a few minutes left. And I'm like, and it's like, okay, well, hopefully you two will carry on, and because I'm like, it was just really calling, and we'll leave it at
Yeah, I understand.
that. But you know, I don't know what you guys were talking about. So
Closing thoughts.
Huh?
Closing thoughts.
Oh, well, there's a lot you can pull and take and get from this book if you sit down with the right heart and right intentions to use it and make it, because a lot of people, will say, oh yeah, or if it's given to them or something, unless they really take it with the right heart and vein. And for me, I'm trying to, like Catherine, look and listen and try and pick things out. I'm still not quite as good at it as I'd like to be, but the main thing I'm getting is I'm learning a lot about myself out of it, and where I'm, how I look at things and how I perceive things, which I know how I do, but I'm looking at it in a whole different light now. And it's, opened up my eyes to, well, I expect everybody to kind of be like this, and I really shouldn't be doing that. And I just have done it naturally, just intuitive, I think, like we all do. And the thing I'm learning is not fair to the other person, but it's not fair to me, because if I'm wanting to receive what I desire is that, same love and intention back from other people, well, I need to do it with that same intentionality back, give it to them first, and, and go from there. And so I think that's what's opening my eyes up more, is to, how am I responding, or how am I acting, or how am I putting it out, and giving to other people, um, what they need, so they respond back and open back up to me. So that's what I'm learning.
Okay.
And that's what I got out of this book.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll close it up. I don't really have any amazing wisdom to share here. Just keep loving on people, loving on yourself, stay in integrity with yourself and others, and you'll be way ahead of the game. And join us on our Facebook page. Check out our YouTube channel on Facebook. We're Mindset Mastery Collective, and we got a group going there, and we post the replays of all these videos that we make there, and also on our YouTube channel, Mindset Mastery Collective. Go ahead and grab the book, The 5 Love Languages. We're reading the singles edition, and it's a great book. And if you know someone who struggles with relationships, or even if you don't think they are, you may not know the whole story. So get the book for them. We got Christmas coming up. It'd be a great Christmas gift. Really.
And I have the book, of course, Being Married, How to Express Heartfelt Commitment to Your Mate. So it's not the single edition, so it might have a few different comments in there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of different versions of this book, and I think any of them would be a wonderful tool to have in your toolbox.
Great.
Until next week, have an awesome time, and go love up each other.
All right, thanks. See ya. Have a great week. Bye.